Hey John, all right, looking great here. I've got your newest iteration here, and I've just got a few comments here, but this is definitely going in the right direction. Nice work. Cassette looks great. That's Tom Cruise from Risky Business, isn't it? Nice touch. This is really relevant, this technique here, and we will. You'll see in a couple of weeks here, but we get into something that's very, very similar to this technique here. So I found that to be very interesting. Stay tuned for that. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. Definite improvement, without question. I love this. This is really fantastic. One thing I would recommend, though, is right now we got this opening here where we're going to have to try to fit his face, right? And the only thing is I think he's a little bit high in the composition. The only reason I say that is because there's a little bit of visual clutter up here, right through here. Visual clutter, not meaning a discouraging term, but meaning a term, a professional term. And that's a term that we do use in the industry, visual clutter. And what that refers to is areas where there are too many visual elements converging. And I see that right here. A lot of it might have to do with the fact that the Rubik's Cube is overlapping his face. So you may reconsider that decision right there. It's up to you, really. But as the composition stands now, I think that if we were just to take him and just move him down a little bit to get him more in that clear opening right there, I think that would be interesting. Or the other option is to leave him where he's at and kind of spread these out just a little bit further from his face, giving the focal point, which is his face, just a little bit more attention to hierarchy. Okay, cassette looks great. Now, one thing we see in the cassette tape is that you're using the same color, Take Me Back, as the background here. And I think that we could add some variety as well as some continuation by using the color, the blue color right there for the Take Me Back. I think that would draw really, really light. It'll improve the harmony by creating consistency in your color palette. Now, this configuration looks great. The white coat is just so indicative of the 80s. But the problem with the coat is this, with the jacket, it's got the black t-shirt on, and that was huge in the 80s too, a t-shirt underneath a jacket, a sport jacket, so that's great. But the jacket looks almost imbalanced, and the reason is simple. You see this little line here indicating where the shoulder meets the jacket itself. We don't have that on this side, so therefore this side looks like it's got a lot more visual weight. So try adding just that little shoulder line there. I think you'll find that it will really even things out quite nicely. Little tiny piece right here. I think that is a little confusing. Almost looks like a mistake. You want to watch that. You've got where will you go stroked, meaning there's an outline on it, and I do not ever recommend stroking typography. The reasons are multifold, but mainly, in essence, what happens when you stroke letter forms is you end up changing the size and a lot of spatial relationships. So in other words, you can change the shapes of the letters by stroking them. You also change the shapes of the negative space between those letters. So it points to not good typographic practice, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I recommend avoiding stroking your type. This is a much better configuration here where you actually duplicate the type, place it behind, and offset it a little bit. One final comment is you've done a really good job starting to add some shading. Love the shading on the face. Now see if you can duplicate that process there where you're actually using solid colors. You're not using gradients. And I think that's really important. Gradient will add too much of a contemporary flair here. This is 80s, right? So we want to kind of keep the graphics historically accurate, so to speak. So gradients are really, as you know, indicative of remember the digital age, gradients were everywhere. So we'll avoid gradients here and keep the gradation of colors set to solid colors, flat color. So this is a great technique right here. You've added this light source here on the right side of his face, indicating a light source coming from over here somewhere, right? But that light source isn't consistent in, let's say, the other area that has been shaded, and that is the telephone. So the telephone, we can see if the light source is over here, These facing areas would hold the light, and this would be a little darker here. You've got it transposed here. This is in the shadow. This is in the light. So this illustration here is indicating a light source over here somewhere. So we want to keep our light source consistent. Also, try these techniques, these solid color techniques from adding depth, dimension, and volume. Try adding a little color. Where do you think the shadow would be in the skateboard? Just take the other area, add a little bit of highlight just by changing the parent hue of that brown, just to change the value a little bit to create a little bit lighter. You do the same thing with the edges of the phone, the cassette tape, all sorts of little areas where you can add dimension, depth, and the illusion of depth of 3 dimensions by creating these gradating light sources without using gradients, right? Now you do use gradient in the bottom here, and I would recommend that you change that out just for the matter of consistency. The car itself and the windows of the car employ gradient, so just to remain consistent, I would remove those 2 solid color. And then of course, just go ahead and add your little highlight areas where you want to, just by changing the parent hue, the value of the parent hue. And you could even add little areas in the sunglasses, just little highlights, just by changing the value of the black to just a little bit of a dark gray, right? You know what I'm talking about. That's a nice highlight right there. So yeah, you got the idea, most definitely. So I'm loving the direction of the piece. I really am. I think that a little more detail, add a little bit more visual interest, and spark up the personality of the piece a little bit. But we are definitely good to go here. You're heading in a fantastic direction. Very, very nice work. Any questions at all, please let me know. Thank you.